The world woke up to stunning news, as headlines blared across every screen and newsrooms scrambled to cover a story that would send shockwaves across the globe. Overnight, the United States launched a series of major airstrikes targeting Iran's most critical nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. These facilities, long at the center of international concern, were hit with precision, lighting up the night sky and leaving the world in suspense about what would come next. In a dramatic, televised address, President Trump appeared before the nation and the world, declaring the targeted facilities totally obliterated. He described the operation as a decisive and necessary step to ensure Iran could never develop a nuclear weapon, framing it as a victory for global security and American resolve. Trump issued a stern warning to Tehran: abandon your nuclear ambitions immediately or face even more devastating military action. His words echoed with a sense of finality, leaving little room for negotiation or compromise. This marks a dramatic escalation in the Middle East, signaling a shift from years of sanctions, covert operations, and painstaking diplomacy to open, direct confrontation. The region, already fraught with tension, now faces a new and unpredictable chapter. The attack came after President Trump abruptly shortened a 2-week ultimatum to just 2 days, catching both allies and adversaries off guard. This sudden move has raised serious questions about whether diplomatic solutions were ever truly on the table, or if military action was always the intended path. The speed and overwhelming force of the strikes have put the entire world on edge. International leaders have rushed into emergency meetings, and the global community is bracing for unpredictable fallout, fearing that the conflict could spiral beyond Iran's borders. For years, the United States and its allies tried to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions through negotiation, sanctions, and international agreements. Countless hours were spent at the bargaining table, with hopes of a peaceful resolution. Now, with these airstrikes, military action has redrawn the conflict's map overnight, creating a new volatile reality. The balance of power in the region has shifted, and the risk of further escalation looms large. The stakes for both regional and global security have never been higher. Analysts warn that the repercussions could be felt far beyond the Middle East, potentially destabilizing alliances and igniting new conflicts. President Trump has framed the mission as a spectacular success, touting it as a demonstration of American strength, but as celebrations erupt in some quarters, the world waits anxiously for Iran's next move, uncertain of how the regime will respond. The Middle East now stands at a crossroads, its future hanging in the balance. Every decision made in the coming days could tip the region toward either further chaos or a fragile new order. The United States has made its intentions unmistakably clear. It is willing to use overwhelming force to achieve its strategic goals, regardless of the risks or the cost. The consequences of this bold and unprecedented move are only beginning to unfold. Emergency teams scramble to assess the damage, while the world's media races to keep up with the rapidly changing situation. As uncertainty grips the globe, the world holds its breath, waiting to see what the next chapter in this high-stakes drama will bring. In the wake of the strikes, Iran's government publicly downplayed the extent of the damage, seeking to project an image of resilience and control to both its citizens and the world. Officials appeared on state television, assuring the public that the situation was under control, and that the country's critical infrastructure remained intact. They insisted that their nuclear program had survived the attacks, emphasizing that Iran's scientific and technological capabilities remained undiminished. Footage of scientists continuing their work was broadcast to reinforce this message of defiance. Yet behind closed doors, Iranian officials issued severe warnings to their adversaries, promising that there would be lasting and far-reaching consequences for the United States and its allies. The rhetoric grew sharper and the tone more ominous, as leaders vowed to respond forcefully. Within hours, Iran launched a barrage of missiles at Israel, dramatically expanding the conflict beyond American targets and signaling a new, more dangerous phase in the confrontation. Israel responded immediately and decisively, striking military sites deep inside western Iran. The rapid escalation stunned observers and sent shockwaves throughout the region. This direct exchange between two powerful militaries has dangerously widened the conflict, pulling the entire region to the brink of a much larger and potentially uncontrollable war. Military forces across the Middle East are now on high alert, with convoys mobilizing and borders tightening. Meanwhile, civilians face growing fear and uncertainty, seeking shelter as the threat of further violence looms. Years of shadow warfare and covert operations between Iran and Israel have now erupted into open conflict, shattering any remaining illusions of stability. Each side's actions provoke immediate retaliation, creating a cycle of violence that makes de-escalation nearly impossible, and raises the stakes with every new strike. Iran has demonstrated its willingness to strike U.S. allies directly, while Israel has proven it will respond with overwhelming force, determined to defend its interests at any cost. The region now teeters on the edge, with every military maneuver and political decision risking catastrophic escalation and the possibility of a wider regional war. The world watches anxiously as a perilous chain reaction unfolds, with global leaders scrambling to prevent further escalation and contain the crisis. In this volatile environment, one miscalculation or misunderstanding could ignite a war that no one can control, threatening countless lives and the stability of the entire region. Iran quickly appealed to the United Nations, demanding condemnation of the U.S. strikes as illegal aggression. This move aims to rally global support and isolate Washington. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned the crisis could spiral into uncontrollable chaos, urging restraint from all sides. Neighboring countries like Iraq condemned the strikes, calling them a threat to regional stability. Meanwhile, Israel praised Trump's decision, calling it historic and necessary. The world's major powers are deeply divided. Europe urges de-escalation, fearing years of diplomacy have been undone. Russia and China condemned the U.S. action as destabilizing and unilateral. These divisions make a unified international response nearly impossible. The region is left without a clear path back to diplomacy. The global community is alarmed, but consensus is elusive. The stakes for peace and stability have never been higher. President Trump defends the strikes as a step toward lasting peace, arguing that decisive action now prevents a larger war later. He frames the attack as a way to force Iran to negotiate from a position of weakness. This approach contradicts his promises to end endless wars and reduce America's military footprint. Critics say he's risking a prolonged conflict, the very thing he vowed to avoid. Trump's strategy is a high-stakes gamble show, overwhelming force to break the diplomatic stalemate and secure a better deal. But it assumes Iran will back down, not escalate. The president's peace-through-strength doctrine is on trial. Supporters see bold leadership, opponents see reckless provocation. The world waits to see if this gamble brings peace or ignites a wider war. The outcome will define Trump's legacy in the Middle East. Back home, Trump faces fierce criticism, not just from Democrats but from within his own party. Some Republicans fear the strikes could drag the U.S. into another costly Middle East war, fracturing party unity. If the operation remains limited, Trump may keep his base. If it escalates, deep divisions could emerge. Democrats accuse him of bypassing Congress and acting recklessly, fueling political battles in Washington. The strikes have intensified partisan divides and raised questions about presidential war powers. Trump's political fate now hinges on Iran's response and what follows. His legacy could swing from foreign policy victory to the president who broke his promise to avoid new wars. Trump's airstrikes are a high-stakes gamble with global consequences. Every decision made in Washington now reverberates across continents, sending shockwaves through capitals and command centers worldwide. The biggest risk is a direct, devastating war with Iran, one that could ignite a firestorm and destabilize the entire region for a generation or more. Such a conflict would not only bring destruction to cities and lives but also threaten the fragile balance of power in the Middle East. The U.S. has made its move, but now Iran holds the cards. The world watches as Tehran weighs its options, knowing that its response could reshape the geopolitical landscape. Tehran faces a tough choice: retaliate militarily and risk overwhelming U.S. force, or seek diplomacy and risk appearing weak to its own people and allies. The stakes are enormous, and every option comes with its own dangers. Either path carries huge risks and uncertainty. The world holds its breath, aware that a single miscalculation could trigger a much larger conflict. Iran could also turn to asymmetric warfare, using proxies, launching cyber attacks, or disrupting vital oil shipments, to strike back indirectly. These shadowy tactics are difficult to predict and even harder to counter. These tactics would be harder to counter, and could spark chaos far beyond the battlefield, affecting global markets, energy supplies, and the safety of civilians in many countries. The region is balanced on a knife's edge, with every decision carrying enormous stakes. One wrong move could tip the balance toward catastrophe. The future is unpredictable, and the risks extend well beyond war or peace. Political alliances, economic stability, and millions of lives hang in the balance. The world braces for what comes next, as uncertainty and fear ripple through societies everywhere. The US can no longer control the chain of events it set in motion. The consequences are now global, and the outcome is anyone's guess. The crisis could erupt at any moment, leaving the world to hope for restraint, but prepare for the worst. In the days after the strikes, tension grips the region. Emergency teams in Israel and Iran respond to missile attacks, highlighting the immediate human cost. The International Atomic Energy Agency reports no radiation leaks, easing fears of a nuclear disaster. Still, anxiety runs high as military forces remain on alert and civilians brace for what's next. Airlines reroute flights, oil prices spike, and embassies issue travel warnings. The conflict's impact is global, disrupting economies and daily life far beyond the Middle East. The situation is fragile. One wrong move could spark a much larger war. The world is watching, hoping for calm. The region's future is more uncertain than ever. The world's focus now turns to Iran's next move. Tehran's leaders weigh options, from massive retaliation to cautious diplomacy. Their decision will shape the crisis, war, or a chance for de-escalation. The US initiated this confrontation, but now Iran controls the next step. American leaders must react, not dictate, as the region stands on a knife's edge. Iran could choose direct military action, calculated proxy attacks, or a diplomatic opening. Internal divisions in Tehran complicate the decision. The stakes are enormous, and the world can only wait. Every option carries risk, and the outcome is far from certain. The next days will determine the region's fate. As the dust settles, three paths emerge. The worst case, a full-scale regional war, drawing in the US, Iran, Israel, and Gulf states, devastating lives and economies. Another possibility, pressured by the strikes, Iran returns to negotiations, opening a slim chance for a new deal. Most likely the conflict simmers. Proxy attacks, cyber warfare, and covert operations keep the region unstable. The old rules are gone, a new, more dangerous game has begun. The next moves by Iran, the US, and their allies will define the future. The world hopes for restraint, but the risks of chaos remain high. The stakes could not be higher. The Middle East stands at a crossroads. The world waits for leaders to choose between war and wisdom.